yeah, you have a job today. Tomorrow, AI is most likely going to replace you. And that's
Yeah.
another huge topic that I'm sure we're going to get into,
Yeah.
and what we're seeing on that front as well. So, we're in this sort of perfect storm of, too much reactiveness. And it's like, how do we get here? Right.
Yeah.
And that's the question. It's like, so if the next question if the first statement is, this is massively broken, the next step is sort of, how do we get there? Right. And it was a combination of, massive overhiring coming out of the pandemic. A lot of people that took a lot of people by surprise, obviously, right? No one really saw that coming. The interesting part about what happened with tech, though, is everyone went remote. Everyone was fine.
Yeah.
It worked out great. People had work-life balance.
Yeah.
Like everyone was loving it. And then as soon as the pandemic ended, all the CEOs said, well, wait a minute, we've got office buildings that we have to pay for. We got to get everybody back in office. So they uproot everybody. Everyone's work situation has changed completely. And now we're stuck, 5 years later. We haven't really sorted any of this out. Now what we've done is we've added AI on top of this mess.
Yeah.
And just thrown everybody to the wolves and said, okay, well, this is going to sort itself out somehow. And I disagree. I don't think it's going to just sort itself out somehow. I think people like you and I, or anyone else that's paying attention to this stuff,
Okay, perfect, perfect. Andrew, thank you very much for taking the time to connect today. Yeah, so like I'm super excited to talk to you because you had a post on LinkedIn and I was like, yo, I just have to talk to this guy, right? Basically, I was super interested in talking to you right now because I personally feel like the tech space is absolutely broken, right? Just like from an employment perspective, in so many different ways, there's so many issues. And the weird part is I feel like it's never really officially spoken on outside of these random like articles where it's like, oh, Microsoft is letting go of 10,000 employees, right?
right.
But like, so you had this post basically where this guy's talking about a day and a half ago, posted a talent acquisition partner role and promoted it to a post here on LinkedIn. I now have over 1,000 applicants, 350 connection requests, and 100 comments on the post, and I've received hundreds of messages, right? So basically, this guy's just talking about the fact that he had a job posting, put it up, and was inundated with so many applications that it's like almost like impossible for him to like go through all of them, right? And it was great because like you had a little rebuttal here, and this is sort of to talk to, right? And basically you're speaking towards the fact that like it's really ironic that a lot of job posters talk about how job applicants are not putting enough work in or are not
Right.
detail oriented enough. But but on the other end of it is it's also like, hey, these platforms are broken. And like, what do you do about it? Right. So I wanted to connect with you and just sort of get a further deliberation of like what you thought about it. Just, get your story here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on. And, it's one of those things that, a little bit of a sassy post for me, if you, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things that you're trolling LinkedIn every day and, you see these posts from the quote unquote experts, right? And it's like, oh, job seekers, no one can find a job. And you see this doom and gloom every day, right? And it's not going away. It's getting worse. And then again, you hop on LinkedIn and you see people talk about the fact it's like, oh, this is easy, you know? Just message the hiring manager and everything's going to work out great.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work that way. Right. And, we're going to talk a little bit, hopefully we can talk a little bit more later on about some go-to-market efforts and stuff like that. You and I are both go-to-market guys, been in sales. So, and, that's a sort of side, bar to this as well. But, as far as the job market goes, what do you do with statistics like that? In a day and a half, if you get 1,000 people reaching out, and applying to this job, hundreds of messages, you're not breaking through that noise.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. Right. So we got to come up with something a little bit better than, putting it back all on the candidates. Be like, you're not doing enough. We're far past that as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It's got very little like that right there, 300 people or something like that. What was it that ended up reaching out?
Sure.
Let me
Yeah.
just pull that up. 350 connect requests.
Yeah.
That's absurd. What do you do with that? Right. And if you're in the job market right now and you're looking at that and that's what you're up against,
Yeah.
the only thing you can really do at this point is get in early. And that's pretty much it. Not a great scenario for anybody to be in. It's not a great scenario for recruiters. If that's what you're so inundated with resumes that you can only look at the first like 20 and that's it. Who knows what you're missing? So the other
Exactly.
side, sorry,
Yeah.
and carry on. Feel free to interrupt me.
No, no,
Do
no,
whatever.
no, no. Go, no, no.
Jump off any of these points.
I'm gonna grab my coffee. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. So again, that's not, it's not really good enough. So what do you do? You can't hop on LinkedIn and tell people, to give these sort of half-baked answers or these half-baked ideas that, you're coming up with. And that's kind of what LinkedIn is a lot of the time. It's a lot of quote unquote influencers or a lot of quote unquote experts that, think they got it all figured out. 99.9% of the time, they're trying to sell you something on the back end of that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just the way it goes. Um, but at the same time, it's also putting out into the market a lot of misinformation and a
Yeah.
lot of just poor advice for this extremely chaotic situation. Like you said,
Yeah.
this is broken, man. This is really, really broken. And I don't think a lot of people are taking that seriously enough. It's a lot of thoughts and prayers from people if you're on the job market right now, if you're looking for a gig. And it's a lot of, well, I have one. I have a job now. I don't have to worry about this. Good luck with that, everybody. The issue being with that is it's very short sighted, it's very myopic. And it's one of those things that, yeah, you have a job today. Tomorrow, AI is most likely going to replace you. And that's
Yeah.
another huge topic that I'm sure we're going to get into,
Yeah.
and what we're seeing on that front as well. So, we're in this sort of perfect storm of, too much reactiveness. And it's like, how do we get here? Right.
Yeah.
And that's the question. It's like, so if the next question if the first statement is this is massively broken, the next step is sort of how do we get there? Right. And it was a combination of, massive overhiring coming out of the pandemic. A lot of people that took a lot of people by surprise, obviously, right? No one really saw that coming.
Yeah.
The interesting part about what happened with tech, though, is everyone went remote. Everyone was fine.
Yeah.
It worked out great. People had work-life balance.
Yeah.
Like everyone was loving it. And then as soon as the pandemic ended, all the CEOs said, well, wait a minute. We've got office buildings that we have to pay for. We got to get everybody back in office. So they uproot everybody. Everyone's work situation has changed completely. And now we're stuck, 5 years later. We haven't really sorted any of this out. Now, what we've done is we've added AI on top of this mess
Yeah.
and just thrown everybody to the wolves and said, okay, well, this is going to sort itself out somehow. And I disagree. I don't think it's going to just sort itself out somehow. I think people like you and I, or anyone else that's paying attention to this stuff,
Yeah.
has to put their heads together and go, we got to do something different here. There's got to be a massive shift. Because if we don't, we're going to be in a lot worse hole than we already are.
Yeah. No, I agree. And you bring a lot of good points. Like, so when I think about it, right? And I ramble, so allow me for a second, but it's funny. So like my background starts in VC, and I think part of when you ask the question of like, how did we get here, right? I think where this starts was like a total misallocation of capital, right? Because there was this period of time where there was so much fever around investment capital. Any company that was doing anything got funded, and it was the stupidest companies, right? So like I remember I was working at Our Crowd and we funded like it would buy to the tune of like tens of $1 million, Ripple milk, right? Ripple is like oat milk, right? First things first, oat milk's not milk. It's like oat water. You know what I mean, right? And then on top of that, it's like what actual value are you adding to the market with this oat milk? Yes, it's an alternative to dairy. Sure, that's wonderful, but it's not like ones that already exist out there in the first place, right? So like what I'm trying to say here in the first is that like these companies that essentially really had no product market fit because they're really not adding a lot of value per se. We're getting funded to the tunes of millions. So now this VC gives you like 3, 10, 20, $30 million, right? And then all they worry about from that perspective is their next up round, like the up round of financing, right? They don't care about the company. All they want you to be, all they want to know is that you're at certain growth metrics, right? And then I feel like that's when the beginning of this issue happened because now these companies, okay, well, we have to grow to X amount of, X KPI, right? So whether it's like user growth, like it was never revenue. This is the funniest part. It was never revenue growth. It was always like projected revenue growth, right? But anyhow, the way you do that is basically by over hiring and hoping that you come to a solution
Right.
for. And that strategy makes sense when, like, let's say interest rates are indicative of like having a lot of excess investment capital. But when that doesn't happen, when that environment, we don't exist in that environment more, that obviously changes, right? So I feel like now we're in this world where you really need to provide value. So this is the first issue. We have a lot of really I was gonna say invaluable, but not in a good way. We have really
Yeah,
yeah,
invaluable,
yeah,
not yet.
yeah. Because it's like I go to so many of these pitch meetings like in Toronto, and like it's always the same theme. I was on at one yesterday, and there's two companies offering like protein. And it's like, bro, we don't need this. You know, at the end of the day. But anyhow, so like these companies that essentially were never able to really provide a lot of value, are now in these scenarios where they're having a really hard validating the business, right? So I
Yep.
think that's when you see the initial round of layoffs in the first place, and then on top of that, like when you on top of that, like as you're saying, right? Like when you start like like what's happened with AI has been so disorganized, right? In terms of like its strategy, implementation, and execution, right? Because I feel like now every company has some sort of AI widget because they feel like they need to
Yes.
participate in that, right? And they
Yep.
get the idea that they can consolidate or compress some aspect of work by having this AI function, which may be true in some contexts, but like is not something that's been truly like A/B tested or like been attrition tested in terms of like, will this model or the system work in your business that you've been operating for the last 30 years, right? And then you're getting into all these reverberations of like, okay, now I let go part of this team, but now I need to like rehire them. But now that talent is not necessarily here anymore because, like you said, remote work exists, so people are no longer necessarily like be like pertaining to one geographic area, and like in culmination, yes, like one huge massive mess, right? But like I don't know, but what I want to I get what I want to hear from you is like I feel like I'm maybe more pessimistic because I'm not sure. I don't see like the exit strategy of this, right?
Yeah.
I don't see how we get out of this scenario because even like let's say we return to even if the economic environment becomes more indicative to business growth, I- the way commerce occurs now has changed so much that it's not like your jobs are gone. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So on the back end of this, like well, like what does work look like now? You
What
know
does
what I
this look like? Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's the question, right? And so it's like, from a hiring perspective and a recruiter perspective, something that I've done for a while, I could tell you what's going on behind the scenes.
yeah,
Not super relevant, I guess. I mean, it is for job seekers, but let's jump right into that. Exactly
yeah,
what you talked about. AI, the job market at large,
yeah,
where this goes. Because the biggest issue right now is, like you said, you talked about the valuations being up and like, a lot of these products aren't super needed, right?
yeah,
Um, but on top of that, it's like, we talked about the fact that, AI is coming for you, whether you like it or not. And, you're saying,
yeah,
oh, it's very pessimistic. It's like, I get the same thing though. It's like doom and gloom. It's like, oh man, it's not going to be that bad. It's like, no, 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 you don't get it. You and I both work in tech.
yeah,
Tech is ground zero for this. This is where it all came from, right? AI and the revolution started in tech. So guess where it's going to spread from?
yeah,
Center out, right?
yeah,
It's going to go to every other industry, but it starts in tech. And so what we've seen is I heard like some ridiculous statistic the other day that it was like 145,000 jobs in tech have been cut already this year. Like, what, A, what do you do with that? And
yeah,
B, I think the bigger issue, and it's real bad for people in the job market right now. No one can find work. Jobs themselves are evaporating left, right, and center. One of the
yeah,
things that I was on LinkedIn the other day, and there was a whole article about the top paying software developer job that 2 years ago you couldn't find people for because they were so hot, they were so in demand, no one was moving, you couldn't get these people.
yeah,
That job today doesn't exist in 2 years. In two
yeah,
years. So,
yeah,
you can extrapolate that all the way back to outside of the job market. And you have to. We're going to have to, because if we rewind all the way to the beginning, now you've got kids being taught in school. My background as a teacher, for those of you out there who don't know, I actually, before I was in tech, I was a teacher for 10 years and I was on the ground zero of this. And I saw this coming 10 years ago where I was like, we're not teaching these kids
yeah,
anything useful at all.
yeah,
And the things that we are teaching them are gone. They don't exist anymore.
yeah,
That is now happening at a rate of, not, tens of years or decades. That's happening on like the monthly scale now,
yeah,
right? Where like 24 months ago, those jobs were hot. They don't exist anymore. So what are we going to do? We have these kids in school now that are coming up through the ranks for jobs that don't exist anymore,
yeah,
right? What do you do about that? One of the things that is big now with AI, as we talked about, getting replaced, and the first real foray into this that I'm seeing is recruiters. First and foremost, they were like ground zero for this big time. There's AI recruiting. Great. We could scan the web, generative AI, pull everything out, and there you go. There are your candidates. Doesn't really work that well. It's not that great. Humans can do it much better. SDRs, that's the next thing that's on the shopping block. And you see this all the time. It's like, and to be fair, it's like, do you need a human being to sit there and cold call people to book meetings for you? Probably not, right? And it's
Yeah,
one of those, and that's the real tricky part about this. The real tricky part about this is not so much that, oh, this stuff's all half baked and maybe we need the stuff, maybe we don't. We're at the very inception of this and it's already taking over. Give this 10 years and think about ChatGPT self-improving itself for 10 years, right? And what's going to happen? We can 3D print houses now,
yeah,
right? Construction workers are on the chopping block.
yeah,
Sales is on the chopping block, recruiting, software development, you name it, teaching, even teachers themselves. I mean, a lot of what teachers do is, personality based. It is selling in and of its own right, to be honest with you. You're selling
yeah,
curriculum,
yeah,
but ChatGPT is like more knowledgeable than 99, 100% of teachers, right? You can't say, and that's the impressive part about AI. It's hard to push back on it because it's so impressive that what it can do.
yeah,
But the issue is what's going to happen is we're going to see very shortly, probably in the next 10 years, like I said, companies are going to literally boil down to a CEO at the top
yeah.
running a bunch of bots.
So it's funny. Like I totally agree, right? So like, okay, I like analogies. I find people love like and like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
understand life through stories, right? So I love the NFL. Football is a very fun sport. People like football for two reasons: touchdowns and the violence, to be quite frank, right? So obviously the NFL had an issue with like concussions, therefore they had to cut back on violence for player safety, right? And in cutting back on the violence specifically, like in the younger generation of players, right? So like Pop Warner, things of that nature, right? You saw like a decrease in like the ability of like linemen to play well, you know what I mean? And like you see now there's been a resurgence of being able to like run the ball. And that's because essentially like the aggression has been gone because you essentially like restructured the incentive program or incentive structure for like training these people, right? And it's interesting because like you're talking about how jobs are going away or jobs are changing. And in the last conversation we had, you actually brought something up that was pretty interesting. And the reason why I brought up the whole football analogy is specifically the deterioration of SDRs, right?
Yeah.
Because like right now, I actually do think the SDR role is gone, to be quite
Yeah.
frank. Because MarTech tools no longer like make that like necessary. And even if you think about it, even the inception of the SDR was a creation of further optimization of like the sales cycle in terms of saying, hey, I just need my closer to close. I just need these guys to set up appointments, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. Um, but it's interesting though, because the SDR is also the entry point for it's the entry point for, if you think about it, the corporate world,
Yeah.
realistically speaking, especially if you look at it from like an academia pipeline, right? You graduate with BCom, you graduate with like, your business degree, you probably end up doing like some sort of like sales rep, like you maybe like a, like, because data entry, it used to be data entry like way back in the day, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Right.
Right, but that's completely gone now too, right? SDRs are the way you basically enter the commercial world. Now you take away that role, like what is the entry point for a lot of these kids to get into that world, right? And then you ask yourself the question that you brought up before too, how AI is going to have effects on like education, right? So now it's like if you're reconfiguring the incentive system and basically telling kids, hey, you can no longer you can go do your BCom degree, get your 50, 70K of debt, right? And then come out of school, there's not going to be an SDR role for you. It's not going to be easy for you to get into like any aspect of professional services in the private sector outside of going to for further education, right? And it's almost like the question of like what are the downstream effects of these haven't really been like asked yet, and it's not a matter of
No.
like 5, 10 years out, right? Like my stepsister, she just graduated her master's, can't get a job in McDonald's. You know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? So her next solution is to leave the country. And I think that's the other part too. I find it very interesting from a policy perspective. We have like, you think like, I don't know if it's like, you have to be too nerdy or too intellectual or looking too far into the weeds to see this, but it's like essentially what's happening now in Ontario is that like we're setting up, or even in Canada, you're setting up a scenario where people will come here, they will get educated for free, and they will leave the country.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
And we're
do.
not asking ourselves what the downstream. Well, I think we're already seeing what the downstream effect of that is, to be quite frank. But like, um,
You're 100% correct. I agree with you 1,000%. No one is looking at the long-term downstream effects of this. What do you do when you have an entire generation of kids right now who are in
yeah,
university and prior to university? Again, going through BCom degrees, getting in all this debt, and then coming out, and then even if they do get an SDR job, you're
yeah,
making like 50K a year, man.
exactly.
You can't live in this. You can't live in the G. If for those of you that aren't in the GTA, it's like $1,000 a square foot for anything here.
Yeah,
The rental markets are out of control. Yes, they're coming down, but still, you can't afford to live on the salaries that they're even providing now,
yeah,
right? So then that goes away. So then now the CEO goes, well, great. I don't care. And this is exactly what's going on. At the top of the food chain, the CEO is going, I do not care about people. I care about money because
mm,
that's their job.
yeah,
And I get it. Like the CEO's job is to make sure the business is profitable
yeah,
and that everything runs smoothly in that regard. If
yeah,
they can save money for the board of directors, they're going to do it. And you see this all the time. You know what it started with? Offshoring,
yeah,
right? And that's the big trend. Everything's offshore now. Why? Because it's way cheaper. Well, what's cheaper than offshoring? AI, right? Don't even have to hire a person.
yeah,
We'll just replace you with a bot. Great. Sounds fantastic from a CEO perspective. You've gutted the entire top of funnel workforce now for entry level people trying to get into the role. Every single one of these AE jobs, these account executive jobs you're trying to get today, for example,
yeah,
at least 2 to 3 years of experience, minimum, selling directly the solution in that industry they want you to have sold. Closing experience, you name it. Doesn't sound like a lot, but what do you do when you can't get that experience? SDRs
yeah,
don't close in the first place, right?
yeah,
They're just setting meetings, passing them off to the AE and calling it a day. They
exactly.
barely have the closing experience to begin with. So what are they going to do? So what do you do with the next level up? So not only have you eliminated the entire base of the pyramid, but then you've made it so you haven't put a ladder down, in analogy, put a ladder down to the next rung of the pyramid to get up for the people at the bottom. You've
Yeah,
just literally separated this pyramid. And then now you got a bunch of people looking up at the top going, well, how the hell do I get up there?
yeah,
And I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. Like we're in a spot now where there has to be some major changes in order to get ahead of just that kind of stuff. But it's like you said, no one's really looking that far downstream. They're looking
they're
at
not.
short-term profits and they're thinking this is going to save me money in the interim, and that's all I care about. I get to retire in a couple of years, watch the world burn. And it's like, there's got to be something better out there than that.
Yeah, I don't even know, but like but even so, like even returning to like some other things that you're trying to say though, c- because I do think things again are so broken. And like, okay, let's go back for a second to like how GTM and outreach and how just how like lead generation and okay, the all of the technology platforms that have contributed to the loss of the SDR role are also
Yes,
essentially now being leveraged to completely ruin outreach. Right.
correct.
So it's like across the board right now, everyone's getting spammed. Everyone is very familiar with spam. I don't care how old you are, you're getting spam calls, you're getting spam emails, you're getting spam messages, right? So it's like the effectiveness of these the effectiveness of these outreach campaigns are also like losing efficiency, right?
Big
At,
time.
at the same time as you're culling the sales force that would be capable of doing that in the first place, right? And it's really interesting, like how broadband this is, because even like okay, so again, yesterday the same event, I was talking to a principal at a VC, and they're basically explaining to me they're like, yeah, I get like 10 emails a day for like deal flow, people trying to reach out to me, but it's interesting because people didn't follow up. So it's like now
Correct.
like my inbox is full, but it's like they're not even reaching out to the correct person in the first place, right? And it's like so like we could talk about all the problems, but I guess like solutions, right? One thing that I am finding is very interesting is that like we're reverting to a space where I would say like if you actually do your job with intent, you can stand out right now, right? Like, so, um, for example, AI slop in outreach, huge problem, right?
Yeah.
However, if you actually like intentfully want to reach out to one person and you're able to do a research on them and send them if you're able to send like a text message, an email, a phone call that doesn't look like spam, it is so easy for you to go get across like the like the wall right now. And that is like one positive thing, because even this podcast I could speak towards that, right? Like, I didn't even really plan for people to be reaching out to me to get on there in the first place, but I just think due to the fact that um it's just putting out value-based content, right?
Right.
People actually see a value to that, and then they're actually able to, like, converse with me, right? But I think that is one positive thing. Like, if you are actually able to truly provide value, in whatever capacity it is, whether it is like you're selling a product or a service, or you are looking for a job, and you're able to find the job that's actually the best fit for you, that you're actually passionate about doing, and you reach out to that person with intent, and the job's available. You know what I mean? But I feel like that is one thing that has sort of changed. I don't know, like, what do you think about that?
I'm going to push back on you a little bit. I think you're correct. First of all, I
Yeah,
think you're 100% correct.
yeah,
But it circles back to the start of the whole conversation where it's like you could reach out with intent. You could like, and I've done this myself.
yeah,
I'll make you a video, right? Like a personalized video,
yeah,
explaining what I'm doing here and being a human being and blah blah blah. When you're up against 350 connect requests and
yeah,
hundreds of messages, it does not matter. It doesn't matter how much you're not getting viewed. That's the
yeah,
point. So let me ask you
yeah,
again. Let's jump over to GTM for a minute.
yeah.
What are you seeing as like the best ways to break through the noise these days? Because as we've said, that is the best way to do it. We know to be personal. We know to be human beings and reach out and do these things. But how are people going to break through the noise now? As we've talked about, like email, super saturated, right? Everybody gets spam emails, everything like junk mail filters, corporate spam filters right now are
Yeah,
brutal to get around. Like
yeah,
some of those big companies, you're not getting anywhere.
yeah,
Calls, phone calls, like you get a lot of people still championing the phone. Anybody under the age of like 40 right now, they don't pick up the phone,
yeah.
right?
That's
They
not.
hate the phone, right?
Yeah,
Really hate it. I know this too, though. If you're calling me and there's a random number that shows up on my phone,
yeah,
for example, I don't know who this is, I'm
yeah,
not answering the phone.
yeah,
You leave me a message, I guess, maybe. Otherwise, you're getting blocked almost immediately as
yeah.
spam. Actually, super interesting. Apparently, iPhone just rolled out the other day. Apple just rolled out this feature now, where they have a personalized AI screen, like someone who screens your calls, AI in the phone. So you can set the setting now that any number that shows up that you don't know, you can set your phone now to automatically have that call filtered by AI, and then the person has to explain why they're calling before that call gets through.
Huh.
That just rolled out
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
couple days ago.
yeah,
So the phone, like LinkedIn can be good if they use LinkedIn. A lot of people don't, or it's sporadic. I've done a lot of prospecting on LinkedIn, and it's worked quite a bit. But again, it's so hit and miss. What are you seeing as someone who's a go-to-market guy himself, as being the best way that you're saying to cut through this noise now, and then in the future, where does this go?
Really simply put, stalk them. Like, okay, like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like you have to be extremely specific. Things have moved now to
Yeah,
extreme hyper specificity, right? So it's like you need to find the person, or the group of 5 people, that are gonna actually have a use case for what you're trying to like sell to them, right? And then this is what I'm trying to say though. Like, the one positive thing is, like, between Apollo, ZoomInfo, HubSpot, and LinkedIn,
yeah,
there is nobody in this world right now that if I want to, I'll find them. Like, you know what I mean? And then from that point, basically, it's just like doing enough research just because even now with like ABM, you can literally figure out like intent strategy or like what are they searching. So I can now create content that's going to be applicable because I can literally like let's say I was trying to find you, right? So I can go on like a platform like 6 Sense or whatever, right? Search you up, figure out what you search online for, right? And then
Right.
create content that's applicable to that, right? Send that content to you, right? So it there's a lot more value now in being extremely hyper focused, which I think can be valuable if you but you have to really drive down like your ideal customer profile and your product market fit. You need to like really have that down pat. And the one thing I will say is that almost nobody has that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I agree.
if a company has if a company really has their ICP down pat and they know their product market fit, they basically don't need marketing. You know what I mean? Like there's a couple companies I work for, and it's like it's so down pat that like the messaging is very straightforward, right? The issue is like a lot of companies have the strategy where they feel like they're gonna pay for marketing to get clients. That's not how it works.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's the opposite way around. Yeah. And the issue is that like a lot of let's say a lot of leaders in marketing, a lot of leaders in sales are still stuck on like scale, right? Which doesn't work. However, it's just how things have operated for so long, and you need to execute budgets, right?
Yeah.
As these systems continue to fail, and you're looking for alternate solutions, the weird, unfortunate part that I'm also seeing is that like uh people start scrambling, you know what I mean? So it's if you can get, if in terms of like let's say like in terms of GTM lead generation, if you can get, it's a very dynamic space. If you can stay up to date on the marketing technology platforms you're utilizing to do outbound, and again like really drive down hyper specificity, that's the best way to win right now, right? Because I feel like even like a lot of companies that were relying on agencies to help them with outbound, they're also failing now, right? Because it's really difficult to like have somebody, an external person who does not understand like your products, right? To actually understand the value proposition adequately and your ICP and whatnot, right? So yeah, this is just the era of like really knowing your shit, really being on top of it, and you can win in doing that. But you just have to like you have to stand out one way or the other.
My question then becomes, when do people learn this? Right. And then this is what we're talking about with the future and some of the stuff that we're seeing. This was stuff that, you're kind of should learn on the job as an SDR, right? So when do you learn this stuff now? I guarantee you they're not teaching you any of this in high school or university if you're getting like a BCom degree or whatever. Like God knows what the hell they're teaching you in those courses now, right?
Yeah.
Super probably out of date. Nothing's probably any useful in any capacity. Do you think you learn how to prospect in like a business degree now? I don't know. That's a good question. Where do
I
you learn this information?
I actually think a lot of the Gen Z and younger millennial kids have a huge advantage right now because at the end of the day, all of this is really self-taught. You basically just hop onto a platform, and due to the fact that we all grew up on Facebook and it changed every month or so, and we had to figure out the UI and how to do things,
Sure. Yeah.
we have a real value advantage. Look at things like Clay, right? Like Clay is this like new list building platform
Right.
that's just a bunch of like random kids made using like AI and whatnot, right? And it's a competitor to Zoom Info. Zoom Info was like a cartel for a long period of time. You know what I mean? Like
Not a Zoom info fan.
nobody like nobody is at all, right? And that's actually another part I want to harken back on because one thing that's not spoken to about AI is not just like the applications from a work perspective. It's not just like taking, let me just get to the point what I'm trying to say. The interesting thing I've found about AI is people who use AI platforms to create apps. So like vibe coding,
Yes.
right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's not even necessarily about like the people that are like vibe coding to create applications to sell them. What I've realized is in a B2B context, there's a lot of companies who do have a CTO or do have somebody that's like pretty adept at AI who's utilizing these platforms to create in-house like widgets like
Yeah.
that do specific functions for the company itself, right? And my question then, like, so for example, I was able to create a LinkedIn outreach app that basically like it can, you can get like a list from Clay or Zoom Info, upload into this app, and then basically I've attached it to like LinkedIn, and it does like a disc analysis to do a personality assessment and creates outreach for you. See, personally, I think I'm an idiot, right? But the fact that I've been able to do that in like 5, 6 days, right, is phenomenal. And
That's
I
amazing. Yeah.
and I wonder, like, what's that going to do to like a HubSpot? or like a Salesforce, when like quite literally, like I don't need to pay $15,000 for your implementation cost on top of my licensing fees for me to continue losing money because my sales led growth strategy isn't working, right?
Right.
So to answer your question, like like I think people realize like on the fly. I like that's the unfortunate part. Companies like will realize this as it happens, and if you're not nimble enough to like switch, like to alter operations, you're just not gonna be able to do so. Like, the last company, like what, like I've been at, I've worked at companies where it's like they've had to completely change their sales model because
Oh yeah.
yeah, just because there's only one vertical that's working.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that was not necessarily in any sense the vertical that the business built on, but now that's what you are now. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because that's the only aspect of the business that's working, right? So I've seen a lot of companies do that. Um, but then that's just really messy from an internal
Oh
perspective
yeah.
because
It's
you
a lot
just
of tail chasing, right? It's just again, and that's what I think why we got into the situation. There's too much
yeah,
reactiveness, too much. We should have had this figured out 5 years ago, and now we're stuck scrambling because we don't know what to do next, right? And that's like, okay, well, we need a solution immediately. Throw this at it. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, try this solution. We'll throw that. And what people have to do is take a step back and do exactly what we're doing here and
yeah,
say, whoa, things are going way too fast. Instead of throwing everything in the kitchen sink at some solution that may or may not work,
yeah,
stop, plan out what you need your business to look like over the next number of years. Management, what do you need to do to get there? Right. And like I said, and you bring up vibe coding. I think that's a great example, right?
yeah,
That's what I'm talking about, though. It's going to be like a CEO and a CTO, like vibe coding a company, which
yeah,
isn't bad, by the way. It's bad in the sense of like the traditional structure that we have now,
yeah,
but it's, if we're talking about the future and what kids, not even just kids, what all of us are going to do. I always say kids. It's not, it's literally everybody.
yeah,
What we're all going to do, we might all have to start vibe coding our own apps in that
yeah,
respect, right? And the entry level, and the good part about AI in that respect is it has leveled the playing field in that respect. So
yeah,
ChatGPT again just came out with a release recently where they're instituting that that's their next rollout is a whole vibe coding app essentially that's going to do this for you.
yeah.
And it's like there's tricky things about that too because Amazon and Google learned that you can't just like flood the market with stuff like this. If everybody can do it, then you get a lot of AI slop, like you said, and a lot of just garbage. Period. So they're gonna have to figure out ways to filter a lot of that stuff out.
So
Um,
but that's the other part of it too. Like to be quite frank, like this is this is my most doomer take possible. Have you heard of the concept of entropy?
sorry.
Have you heard of the concept of entropy?
Yes. Oh yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So like the issue, like like the way things are looking right now is that AI is just gonna kill us. Because the unfortunate part is that like, okay, the initial iteration of AI is trained on human information, right? Then
Yes.
humans use AI to create more information, right? Now you have AI influenced information. Now the AI trains itself on that information,
Exactly.
right? And
Hmm?
now and then we learned, oh, hallucinations are a thing. So now this information that's been created is not necessarily 100% true. And even if it's like 2%, the fact that it's continuously trading itself on this is a really bad thing happening. And that's aside from the fact that like just like the oversaturation of like content, but even now like the apps, because like I think that's the more I think a lot of companies really do not understand how simple their business is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I agree. I agree with that 100%.
So it's like I keep on asking this question, and that's the one thing like nobody's been able to answer to me. And I'm talking to VCs, I'm talking to angel investors, and I'm like, hey, I keep on asking, yeah, so like this vibe coding thing, like I understand that, like, some people are able to make apps and like that's wonderful too, but the fact that I can create like a just like what's that gonna do to valuations? Nobody has an answer because they're not really thinking about it, right? So so there's that aspect, but then even past that, I just think where the flow of commerce is happening, because that's the unfortunate part. We've gone from being like, and now I'm just ranting. We've gone from being a dynamic economy to one that follows like capital flows, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
big thing now is data centers, and I'm
Yes.
not sure how you've heard about this, but there's so much
Oh yeah.
money. Yeah, there's so much funny money flowing into data centers. The economy is literally shifting. to service data centers, right?
Oh,
Um,
I'm betting on it. That's the
yeah,
thing. That's the other side of this. Just to interrupt you real quick is like this is one thing I did see coming. So
yeah,
a couple years ago, or like
yeah,
literally 2 years ago, I was
yeah,
like, I'm just going to invest in data center AI infrastructure. And it's been fantastic.
yep,
Like those stocks are just going absolutely mad. And it's
yep,
because like you said, the entire economy is pretty much now dependent on this. And that's why a lot of people, they're talking about, oh, AI bubble, AI bubble. Yeah, it may pop. And I think, I don't know if it was Jeff Bezos that was talking about this recently. He's like, yeah, we kind of need a bubble to cull the weak, essentially. Right. And it's like, as we said, there's so many companies that don't really provide any value whatsoever in this spec. They're
yeah.
throwing AI at everything. We kind of need them to go away in that respect. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, the entire economy is dependent on this thing.
I want to introduce a unique concept, and I stole this from John C. Dvorak. He also does another podcast called No Agenda, but he said something and it really compelled me. He's like, "Bubbles pop, silos don't."
Yes.
Right?
There you
So like,
go.
capital stays within silos, and when I think about it, I actually think the bubble has already popped. It's just the capital is moving within these silos,
Interesting.
and that's why we're seeing these trends. I don't think this whole like the whole market moving towards building data centers would happen if the bubble was still like existent, right? And that's the scariest part. It's not a matter of like these like SMBs and like startups that are like are participating in building data centers. No, it's these
Yeah.
5 to 10 major tech
Yeah.
companies
That's
that are
correct.
throwing billions, hundreds,
Trillions.
billions of dollars. And here's another one I want to talk about too, actually. But this is just while I'm on the topic of large tech corporations, data and content. I think another very significant thing that happened was this acquisition of TikTok.
Oh
Oracle's
yeah. Hmm.
acquisition of TikTok, right? I think that's huge
Hmm.
for a lot of reasons. A lot of people in the market were talking about it because the acquisition only happened at 4x of revenue of TikTok, making it the most discounted acquisition of a tech company in recent history, right? Because usually things trade on a 8, 10 plus multiple, right?
Yeah.
So to get TikTok for like yeah, for Larry Ellison to get it's yeah right Larry I think it's yeah Larry Ellison to get TikTok, right, and then I think it's I forget, is it David Ellison who's like well, I don't know, all I know is that I'm messing up the names, but the other Ellison is also responsible for the Paramount Skydance acquisition,
Yeah. Right.
which like if you just think about it from a data repository and content generation perspective are huge steps. And I don't even know how that's possible to happen from like a because I know the US has like the what's it called, the anti whatever competition committee whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so I think those will be very significant things um in terms of like continuing this trend of like I don't know where we're going, but just the fact that like these companies are acquiring more of this real estate, it should be actually very concerning considering like the trend we're currently on. But
Well, and that's what I said. Like that's why like I'm in full doom and gloom mode in that respect. Like I'm fully not only expecting AI to take over everything, like I'm
yeah,
banking on it as a matter of
yeah,
fact, right? In that respect. And it's like OpenAI has spent $1 trillion this year, $1 trillion in deals, like its infrastructure deals this year. A
yeah,
trillion. You that's not going away. The genie's not going back in the bottle in that respect.
yeah,
You better get on board with this in some capacity or another. And that's the thing. It's like what's going to end up getting called is it's the fringe companies themselves that like what I call vanity software a little bit, right? And there's tons of these
yeah,
companies. Like, do you really need this X, Y, and Z product when like the chips are down and like, the company needs to save money? 99% of the companies, no, not really, right?
yeah.
But that's why that's why those, as you said, those 10 or so companies that run the AI infrastructure, they're just going to laugh all the way to the bank because everyone else is going to have to tap into that stuff. And that's the whole cloud marketplace, the hyperscalers. That's a whole
Exactly.
other, a whole other thing there. Um, so yeah, again, that's a super doomy perspective. But then you have to look at the other side of that though, as we've talked about and said, okay, great. If that is going to happen, you're going to have a significant portion of the population now with no jobs. What do we do with those people?
Like that's like where do you go in that direction, right? Like and there's no there isn't, and I think the worst part about this is like, quite frankly, I don't think there's any foresight or like any.
And like I said, there doesn't need to be because it's all about money. So as soon as they see like, oh, I've saved this, $50,000 to replace an SDR, which by the way, if you're a $1 billion company, like,
What's that mean to? Yeah,
come on, right?
yeah,
But that's what it's all about. So it's, oh, I saved 50 grand here and I oh, great. Well, then where else can I save money? Oh, those software developers. Well, we don't need software developers anymore. Oh, get rid of them too, right? And it's just like, it's a trickle down effect of this idea at the top of people don't matter. It's not about your people. And companies are hilarious when they talk about that. You've seen this. Like big companies, oh, we're a family and like blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, 10% of you are now out the door. Goodbye.
yeah,
Um, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's the kind of thing that is an illusion big time. And I think it's a very thin illusion that's now fading away with AI. But then again, it's not going to fix the problem. It's going to create a bigger issue that we already have in society of like the middle class is gone, right? It's literally like a bunch of super billionaires or you're poor.
yeah,
Like and that's just going to get worse, I think. Now, the question is, again, super doomy. But you have to think about this kind of stuff. You have to talk about this kind of stuff because if you don't talk about this kind of stuff, then again, you can't bury your head in the sand. You
yeah,
can't bury your head in the sand. You can't cover your ears, can't cover your eyes. Oh, la, la, la. I don't hear anything. I don't, it's not going away. Like we said, the genie's not coming back. You're not going back in that bottle. Great.
yeah,
Everybody, every company right now should be terrified of their current structure of what they have. And every single C-level like board even should be figuring this out currently and they should be terrified about it. It's simple as that. There needs to be a massive overhaul in the training for management in this respect. And going back to hiring, okay, let's bring this right back to the start. So again, nobody can get a job.
yeah,
Right. One of the big reasons why nobody can get a job right now is the fact the criteria to get those jobs is astronomical. It is so far out of whack. And I've worked with hiring managers, tons of them over the years, where I'm looking at them going, you, for this job that you're asking me for, you are out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Like
yeah,
there's nobody on the market that fits this. B, if they do show up, it's like two or three guys who are probably already have a job and don't want to move and you're not going to pay them enough. So what
yeah,
are you going to do? Right.
yeah,
You said it before during this podcast. You're like, a lot of companies don't realize how simple their business model actually is. Well,
yeah,
I'm going to extend that to jobs. 99.9% of hiring managers don't understand how simple it is to do the job that they have, especially in sales. God, there's nothing that pisses me off more than like sales managers that like, oh, here's my like 12 criteria list deep of things I need. It's like, hire someone who can talk to people and who's hungry and who, doesn't mind going out and doing that work. That's all you need. You need someone who's personable, who's intelligent, and can ask good questions. That's your fucking job in
yeah,
sales. Sorry. And again, it was like, oh, this person can't be selling federal government. They'll never figure it out. Oh, they were selling SaaS. No, we need someone who's selling services and like just kept going. And it's like, who didn't work ever? The people that hit all those boxes ever.
yeah,
And what inevitably ended up happening or ends up happening in those situations, like, oh, I know this guy who worked for, X, Y, and Z company like Oracle or again, a Salesforce. People love Salesforce.
yeah,
Oh yeah, they must know what they're doing. And then they bring them in and they don't. They have no fucking clue what they're doing. Right. And it's just like, oh, well, they worked for a big logo. So we got it that they must be good. It's like, no, 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 no. Hire on aptitude. You can train, get someone who's intelligent in the role and train them.
yeah,
That is what you're going to have to do moving forward now because no one's going to have the skills that you require because you eliminated the base of the pyramid,
yeah,
right? So that's a huge deal. And that's something that if we're talking about solutions, that has got to be a shift in the market. And that is precisely why we are seeing this impasse right now. It's old school dinosaur hiring managers that are terrified of making a bad decision. They're terrified. They're the most risk adverse people I've ever seen in my life, but to the point of paralysis.
yeah, yeah,
You've got that mentality on this side with a whole bunch of people that don't they don't meet the requirements because the requirements are ridiculous, right? So then you have hiring managers going, we can't find anybody. Why can't we find anybody? And there's a whole like thousands of people knocking on the door being like, hello, hi, hello. And they don't even talk to them, right?
yeah,
So first things first, if we want to get out of the situation, that's by far and away the thing that has to change the most. People have to start hiring for aptitude. They've got to start hiring for intelligent people who, it's like what, and simplifying, like you said, simplifying their business model. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? And what do we need this person to do? Can we train that? Those three questions are the only thing you need to be asking yourself at this point. And if you could ask yourself those questions honestly and get rid of the ego, and it's like, because sales is hilarious. And I don't know if you've noticed this as well. Sales is absolutely hilarious because everybody in sales who's in a different industry points at everybody else and says, you could never do what I do. So the cloud guys all point to the hardware guys and go, oh, you sell hardware? You could never sell cloud. Then the cloud guys are pointing to the services. The service guys are pointing to the cloud guys going, oh, you sell SaaS? You could never like be a consultative seller like we do, right? And then they all exclude each other. They're all
Yeah,
doing the exact same thing. All that's just product knowledge that you hop on and anybody can onboard you if you're half, worth your salt.
exactly.
It's not super complicated, but it's again this really dinosaur old school mentality that people just, and they're terrified of making a bad hire. So they want what failed last time, right? Oh, this person met all my boxes, even though it failed. Well, whatever. That's all I know, and I don't want to hire this like teacher. God forbid. Could you imagine like
Yeah.
hiring someone from out of industry to do this job? Like, I don't know. And you're gonna have to do that a lot more coming up because no one's gonna have the experience to meet any of these criteria.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think part of that is because you're talking to middle managers who honestly have no they have no like real investment in the company? They don't like it's not like my job isn't for this company to be successful. My job is to be a middle manager.
I just see it as fear. I
Yeah.
really do. Like in my experience, doing this over like 7 years or whatever it may be now, it always boils down to fear. They're
Yeah.
terrified about making a bad decision. And the irony is they don't listen to talent acquisition either because they know better, right? Quote unquote. They're the ones that are doing the selling or whatever. Um, that's what I see more than anything else. It's total fear. It's am I because if I make a bad hire, my job's on the line, right?
Yeah.
And that's I get it. I totally get that mentality. But at the same time, like there are so many good people on the market and so many like capable people right now that just can't break through that. Um, and then again, what like we said, what do you do with those people on the back end? Then there's stuff like universal basic income. That's never going to happen, right? And if it does happen, it's going to blast inflation through the roof. Um,
I'm confident it does happen. To be honest, I'm actually confident that does happen.
really, you think so?
I'm confident it does. I'm
Do
confident.
go on, sir.
There's no like okay, I can only speak towards Canada, but like we don't realize how bad the scenario is here for 18 to 35. It's
Oh
really
yeah,
right because like we don't actually if I were to look at it actually, what's the unemployment rate for hold on unemployment rate Canada 18 to 35. It's like hold on. So unemployment rate in Canada 1835. It says it's around 14.5 in August 2025.
and like
Uh
even that seems outrageously low to me.
it
As far as
because
like, I
like
bet it's way higher than that.
it's because the other part too for 1835 if you're not if you're not actively looking for work for is it like 2 months or like a period of time you're no longer considered like in
Oh,
the work.
okay.
So that's how they
Yeah.
actually are able to reduce unemployment, like right. But I think the other part, like just having it north of 8% is really bad. And 18 to 35 is your most valuable working cohort with age because like their wealth accumulation is essentially what's going to like sustain the country from like a tax revenue perspective, right? So it's like if we have this continuing trend of people 18 to 35 not get jobs, not upskill, not train, not make money, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna get to this point where you need UBI. Like,
And that's why I said it's so myopic, right? It's one of those like you can't not think about this. If you're a business leader, if you're
yeah,
C-level, if you're running one of these tech companies or any company for this matter, you know, I'm of two minds about it because I do think you have some sort of moral obligation to like get ahead of this. But at the same time, again, business is business and it is all about money. So it's really, 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 really tricky in that respect because it's like I personally think that is going to hurt your bottom line in the long. That's the thing. I think it's too short term thinking. I think, yeah, you're saving 50 grand on an SDR here, but at the cost of potentially gutting your entire talent industry,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Period. Um, you even talked about it yourself, I think earlier. It's like, well, it's like you can't even get a job at McDonald's or like a grocery store at this point. And what are you going to do in that case too? It's like if you were working in like some white collar job at a in B2B, you lose your job, you can't find a job. You're going to go apply at a grocery store. They'll never hire you. First of
Yeah.
all, you're overqualified, and it's hilarious because I remember back in the day, way back in the day when I was working retail. I was working right outside the Eaton Center, as a matter of fact. There used to be a Levi's store there. I remember this guy came in and dropped off his resume. And we're looking at me and the manager are looking at the resume, after he left, and the guy's got like a PhD in like astrophysics or something. We're like, what the hell are you applying here for? Like, no, we can't hire you. And that was like 15 years ago, or more than
Yeah.
that now. Who knows? But you know what I mean? It's stuff like that. And so you're going to enter this weird scenario where like you're way too qualified for the super entry level jobs that we used to give to teenagers, right? Which, by the way, they can't get anymore, and
Yeah.
those are all going away. Like, so again, what do you do?
So like I think like and this is the only time my poli sci degree comes in handy, right? But I think what ends up happening is like the people who have to make the decisions are the policymakers, and it's funny because they never really make decisions until they're forced to make a decision, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
things are gonna get really bad until they precipice into an election year, and when it's responsible to get to when it's political leaders' responsibility to get like voters into the booths, this is when this is going to become more of a problem. But I think now, considering that the millennials are actually now the largest working cohort in Canada, things are going to start changing, and I think we start seeing like a huge swing to probably more like conservative like principles, right? Because this is it is beyond it is beyond unsustainable. And like the worst part of it too that I realize is that there's this extreme disconnect from the baby boom generation, because
Oh yeah.
the lives that they've lived and currently live, they're so cocooned. Like they quite literally do not understand the realities of
No,
it, right? So
they
it's
do
like
not. My
and,
parents are a prime example of this. I have conversations
exactly.
with them all the time. They don't get it, man. They just don't.
And it's crazy because it's like you'll have very simple, like they'll ask you very stupid things, like just like, hey, like, why don't you why don't you just go find the hiring manager? Simple things like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, right.
reach out to them and be like, hey, like, no, that's not how this market works right now. Or they'll be like, oh, you're using AI to like proofread your resume. Maybe you shouldn't do that. It's like you have no idea how things are working right now. You don't
Right.
understand, right? And it's just like the disconnect has become too strong, right? And I think from a policy perspective, it will start reflecting that, and there's going to be like strong reverberations, and that's actually why I think UBI is going to become a thing. Because the unfortunate part is that you can't just ask your politicians for jobs, right? It's like, hey, I got to survive, at the end of the day, and I think UBI is going to be the only answer at that, and I think that says really bad things about Canada going forward. Because the thing that we're not thinking about is like, as a generation, what happens? You know what I mean? And like, there's almost this like I used to know this New York banker, and there's this term called IBG YBG. I'll be gone, you'll be gone.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Right?
Yeah.
But I there's just like a real disconnect of like what happens with this next generation if they're not able to get jobs or command capital at all. Like what is the direction of this country? Are people gonna stay here? Like if Canada's wonderful right now, I've loved growing up here. You know what I mean? But it's like, is it gonna be like that going forward? Like I do not know. Are we gonna become the new data center shithole where basically it's like there's like a new data center being built every block because it makes sense up here or not? Like who knows? But it's like if we do not take proactive actions as us, not like the old people, like the younger generation, you know what I mean, needs to like actively start pushing more so to ask policymakers to create a reality that actually reflects one that they want to live in. Because quite
We're
frankly, like, yeah,
we're just so pinned down though by the old system, and that's like I made a post recently talking a little bit about this. What I did my master's degree on was organizational theory largely. It was
yeah,
basically looking at the top companies at the time. Most of them were in tech, to be honest with you, and like how they were functioning and what they were doing from a people perspective that was making them so attractive in these places that they wanted to work for.
yeah,
And the difference was that 99% of companies are run on something what's called the managed system. It's the early 1900s factory model. That's what we're still running shit on today. Everybody's doing it because nobody wants to change. It's tradition at this point. Nobody wants to do anything different. We're at a point now where we're getting our hand forced here, I think. And the question that I asked, in a just random, post there was, if AI is supposed to save everybody so much time and effort and like these skills that, we can do in like a blink of an eye that would have taken us, so much time before. Well, why the hell are you still ordering people back to an office building to sit there for 8 hours a day? What the hell? We showed with the pandemic, it doesn't have to be that way. People can have work-life balance. They can get everything done if they're high, if you're a high functioner. Some people don't like remote work, and that's fine. Like they're because they need someone hovering over them to get their work done. They'll just procrastinate. I'm not like that. I loved it. I'm super self-motivated. I get my stuff done, and then like that's it. I can go about my
Yeah,
day, and I've done
yeah,
everything I have to do, and I feel great about it. Do I have
yeah,
to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours with someone over my shoulder micromanaging me to do it?
yeah,
Absolutely not. And I don't think most people do. Everyone hates that, right? So
yeah.
so what are you ordering people back to the office now? It makes
I have
no
my
sense whatsoever. And that's because the dinosaur, like I said, these dinosaur boomers, unfortunately, and I'm sorry to any boomers that are looking, you're not all like this. Some of you actually do know what you're talking about, but it's that mentality of, oh, I walked across the street and got a job after I told my boss to go shove it, right? Like back in the 60s or whatever it may be. How come you can't do that? It's like, because it's like 60 years later, man. Like you don't
yeah.
get it.
So
And, and, and it,
I have my thoughts on the whole RTO mandate, and I'd be interested in hearing your thought. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I actually think the RTO mandate is because like for a lot of a lot, so like it's for the public sector, or I've obviously there's not like a unified RTO date, but like I know the public sector and the banking, a lot of the banks want employees to return to the office sometime like what, like mid Q1 next year,
yeah.
right? I personally think that's actually like part of restructuring.
Oh, do go on.
One thing I do know right now is all the banks for the last year have been restructuring aggressively, right? So even like right now, there's a lot of teams being cut.
Yeah.
Um, and like it's interesting that that's happening right before an RTO mandate, where it's like, oh, the people that like decided to leave the country and still have this job, well, if you can't come back, I'm sorry, we're gonna
Right.
have, right. So, and I'm not sure if that's gonna be like we're gonna have to replace you, or if it's just like we're just cutting, right. But I think like a lot of smart money is looking at a lot of like headwinds economically next year. Um, and it's just not going to be good. Like even in Canada right now, we're back into an interest rate cutting. We're back into an interest rate cutting campaign, or whatever you want to call it. But inflation is still on the rise, and there's no reason why we're actually going to increase GDP quarter over quarter, right? So it's like if we're actually officially in a recession by Q1 next year, because it's just two consecutive declining quarters of GDP, two consecutive quarters of declining GDP constitute a recession, and we have not done that yet, because essentially we've been importing enough people where the economic activity has essentially like sustained the lack of productivity from a commercial perspective, right? But now the interesting thing is that we're actually also now, and this is what I'm trying. This is the interesting thing too, and I love that I could talk to you about this, because I love being hyper specific in Canada, right? Um, we have now started to try to limit the influx of immigrants, and we're also now aggressively trying to like get people on open work permits and whatnot out, right? Because it's essentially, there was this program where if you had an open work permit, you could come to Canada
Yes.
for 2
That's right.
years, and there was a point system. So out of nowhere, they changed the point system. So now if you have an open work permit, you got to leave, right? The interesting thing is, though, a lot of people who are on that open work permit have jobs here. Okay. Right. So it's like, so I think like last year, it was like 50 to 60,000 people left Canada. Now, if you think about that, the interesting thing is that if those 50 to 60,000 people have jobs, you're literally importing, you're importing, sort of, what was I looking for? You're increasing the unemployment rate by like,
Yeah.
you're importing unemployment by
Yeah.
exporting.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm
Right.
trying to say?
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
So that's actively happening right now in Canada. And again, like I'll say, on a higher level, we are now reducing interest rates. Inflation is still on a rise, and unemployment is going to increase. Right. So, like all of these things are happening while also the public sector and the banks are like, oh yeah, Q1 RTO mandate. Very cute for that to happen at the same time, in my humble opinion.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
We took out like, talk hyper specific about Canada too. It's like my question for you is, of those 50 to 60,000 people, what were their jobs? Like, where are we losing those jobs? Where, and again, there's the idea too that apparently that we don't have enough people to work the jobs here. So we have to keep importing them. But like, but if no one can find jobs simultaneously, and you simultaneously also can't find people to work these jobs, what the hell is going on here?
So
Like,
I'm going to speak very anecdotally because this is the other part that I think policymakers do not understand. In their mindset, they're like, we're importing these immigrants. They're gonna get low skill labor jobs.
right.
They're not,
Yes.
you know what I mean? What they don't realize is that like the people that came here had family members that worked at the bank, that worked in healthcare, that worked, like in these integral parts of our society. They got jobs there because another thing they don't realize is that the public sector works on nepotism, right? So,
Yeah.
right,
100%.
like for the most part, like banking industry works on relationships, right? That's how
Yeah.
you get along in Toronto. So when I say you're exporting 50 to 60,000 people, they think they're exporting 50, 60,000 like Tim Hortons workers. Not
Right.
necessarily the case. You know what I mean? So it's like this is the other part. That's not really spoken on too strongly because some of these employees were really good. Like Deloitte and the Big Four love hiring immigrants,
Oh
because
yeah.
right. So like, and they're not going to be able to replace that talent. They're not in a short amount of time because at
Well,
the same
let me ask you this though. It's like, how why not? Like,
because we're leaving.
if nobody can find a job in Canada right now, and a lot of these
Yeah,
jobs that, again, we're talking about, like, even the unskilled, like they think it's going to be a lot of, like, again, people working at like Tim Hortons or Walmart,
yeah,
whatever the hell it may be. Those were the jobs that were historically taken by teenagers, though.
yeah.
And that gap that we're talking about is like they can't even get those jobs now, right? It's because now we're importing these workers on top of that. Is that like what do we do there?
And that's what I'm trying to say. Nobody
Mm.
nobody understands the critical mistake that they made here. The idea here was that like we're going to import people and it's going to like whatever help us from a GDP perspective, right? And then a lot of the companies were like, "Hey, these immigrants are able to work harder for less money." Now, what
Yeah,
happened is that like the same demographic, the millennials and like the older Gen Zs, we left. My sister has her master's. She's leaving the country, right? So it's like you can't just get her to come back, and that's what I mean. They're not going to be able to replace this talent
I
because
agree.
you force the people that would replace it to leave, right? So and
I
that
agree.
and the fact that they don't and the fact that they don't see this, I myself as OT and Odeny find absolutely fascinating. But I get it. How would you? How do you like? You know what I mean? Like, you're not involved. You're not involved as a policymaker. I'm not around the immigrants that are actually coming to the country. I don't know the ones that are getting the jobs and like I don't really see it. I'm not on the ground, right? But
Yeah,
like, but that, yeah,
I think again it speaks to that, myopathy again of the people at the top. And again, like Doug Ford, for example, it's like they don't care. They just do things because it suits them and it looks good on paper. And then it's up to people like us to talk about, well, we're looking at the stuff filtering down, going, no, 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 no. No, this works. They're
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah, whatever. We don't care. I gotta get elected next time, right? And that's a
yeah.
huge. And if you want, I mean, we could go into that's a whole other political thing. It's like that's why Trump won in the States, by the way. That right there is the primary reason that he won, because people are sick of politicians. They're sick of lying politicians. And all he did is come in and lie and say that I'm not a lying politician. They're like, thank God. We're so sick of you lying scumbags, like ruining things for us. Maybe this guy who says he's not a lying scumbag isn't a lying scumbag. Well,
And
not so
honestly,
much.
like I feel like that's gonna happen in Canada because again,
Oh,
like
yeah.
we're not looking at the level of desperation of like the
No.
younger generation. And again, I'm using an anecdotal example of my young stepsister as well, but like just that, like I hope, well, I don't know. Please don't get mad at me. You know what I'm trying to say, but like but just seeing the psychological toll it's taking on her because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, she was promised a life here.
It's
You know,
brutal. It's brutal.
she doesn't even bring it up, but I can see it. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like you're telling me I have no value in the place that I grew up in. I went and did my master's. You're telling me I can't even get a job, and like that is so psychologically damaging to a
Oh,
generation
yeah.
that's already psychologically vulnerable due to the technology, right? So like I'm just sitting here and being like, yo, like when we get a Canadian Trump, everyone's gonna be like, oh my God, no. I'm like, bro, like why would you be surprised?
You shouldn't
Like,
be at all. Yeah, you're right. And that was supposed to be Kevin O'Leary. I think that was kind of what he was doing
nah,
for a while, Shark Tank Bro. But
I think it's gonna be much worse. That's the
I
unfortunate
think you're
part.
right.
Okay, and this is the contentious part, but whatever. It's my podcast. So I think, but yeah, from a policy perspective, the environment that's been set in Canada has been absolutely terrible.
Oh,
I moved to
oh,
Canada, and
horrific.
I moved to Canada in 1999. Like so, like I was like whatever, like the first place I moved to was Edmonton. I've never
Mhm.
met people so nice in my life. The nicest people I've ever met in my life, right? Right now, if I were to tell you like Albertans, people think they're right wing, like, conspiracy theorists. You know what I'm trying to say? The change in behavior, like, is indicative of like what's happened in this country over the X amount of years, right? So what I'm saying is like I think like what in terms of even from a demographic perspective and like the immigrants that have been brought in, and the fact that nobody's even like it's not even the there's so much fission in these societies, you know what I mean? And I think when you add like economic like difficulties to it as well too, it just paints such a dark picture of where we're gonna be in like 5, 10, 15 years. I don't see how we don't get there. Or,
I agree with you 100%, man. And it's like, and that's one of the reasons that's frustrating, right? And why, again, my initial post was a little sassy, like I said, because I'm sick of it, man. I'm totally sick of it. And it's like, again, you log on, you've got, and you're bombarded with this on social
yeah,
media, wherever it may be, of like, again, it's like, no, 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 I've got the answer. I'm the expert. This is what's going on. Just do this. And then the boomers, right, saying the same thing. It's like, well, what do you mean? Like, it's so easy to get a job. Like, God bless my parents. They worked really hard. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. But my mom like walked into a job as a teacher with just literally walked straight into it out of, teacher's college or whatever it may be. My dad
yeah,
was a dentist, like who built like his practice in Glen Abbey essentially, when it was nothing, when it was like a field. And it's like
yeah,
because boomers had the opportunity to do that. We don't
yeah,
have that. Those opportunities are gone for us in our
yeah,
generation. And moving
yeah.
forward, the fields are barren in that respect. We tilled them to oblivion. There's no, unless you want to go up north to like Sudbury or something. And but even still, like those
And do you
areas are.
know? I'm gonna
But that's
survey,
exactly it. I don't know.
survey
I
land.
don't know.
Like what are we like? What do
But
you
it creates, but it speaks to what you're talking about with your, your sister-in-law. It was, or sorry, stepsister,
stepsister? Yeah,
stepsister.
yeah,
Exactly what you're talking to. How bitter is that going to make everybody moving forward? If you're prepared, and I think all of us were for this, I speak for myself. Maybe I'm just on the cusp of that, where I feel like my generation was the transition between analog and digital. And
yeah,
then we got lost in the middle somewhere because we were trained in this analog world. And then by the time we were done, everything was digital. And it's like, oh, well, none of these skills apply anymore. Um, and that's exactly what's going on right now with kids, except at a way quicker pace. So
exactly.
what's going to happen? Everyone's going to be so bitter and resentful about everything in the market because it's like, well, what did I just go to school for? What was the point of that? I
Yeah,
spent, you know, 15, 20 years in school, potentially, for quite literally nothing. When I
yeah,
was at the tail end of my teaching career, and the reason I got out of teaching was because of this, by the way. Like I looked at what was going on like X number of years ago, and I'm like, this isn't serving anybody. This is actually making things exponentially worse. The things that we're teaching kids, we're not giving them any skills. We're giving them a free pass for no accountability whatsoever. Everything's put on the teacher. It's all their fault for everything. The parents are running Hulkamania over administration. Like administration are terrified. They will capitulate to the parents in any turn. It's a disaster. So you have that situation going on before they even get into the workforce. And then when they get to the workforce, they realize that none of those skills and nothing they trained for was useful in any capacity. That's a dire situation, man. That's not sustainable for like a year, let alone multiple years that we're probably going to have to deal with this because no one's doing anything about it.
man. Well, that's fun.
Yeah, I know, right? Again, so what do we do? Again, if we
Yeah,
got to come up with some solution here as far as like what does this look like? And when I think about solutions, and that's what I talk about, there has to be a systemic training from the very top on, hey, wake up,
yeah,
wake up. You guys cannot afford to sit here and do the same thing you've been doing for the past X number of years anymore. You will gut this entire workforce. Please, this is the way to do it. Hire for aptitude, train skills. You're a manager. The whole point of if you're a manager out there and you don't train your people, and that's not your whole entire purpose for coming to work every day, you need to
yeah,
be gone.
and
You need to be
yeah,
gone. It's not to your purpose of a manager isn't to show up and have your team make you look good. It's the opposite. You show up and then you do what you can for your team for them to turn around and make you look good, not
yeah,
the other way around, right? And that doesn't happen anymore. And it's this, well, and now I don't even have to train people. I just get to run a bunch of AI bots. And it's like, oh no. And that's why,
This has been a great conversation.
yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Um,
This is great.
what's the best way people get in contact with you?
Honestly, find me on LinkedIn. Andrew Lang there. I also run a consultancy called Phoenix Consulting Canada. If you
Mhm.
want to drop me a line there, absolutely, that's the best way to get me.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. And hopefully talk to you again soon.